I was told, the statement was when we've got the park cleaned up and the encampment out of it, would the city consider taking that park on? And I said, maybe. And as I thought about that, there's no way with our existing resources that we could take that on. That park is bigger than all of our parks combined. On the other hand, I don't trust, even the county got the encampment out, I don't trust, no, sorry, Scott, I know I'm painting you in that broad brush as a county employee, but I don't trust the county. I think at some point it'll revert back to this problem.
Right.
So I've got a thought on how we could do that. And I don't think I think it's in your packet. This document here. And did I give you the second? Yeah, and the one underneath it. And nope, that's park impact fees. Don't look at that. This is Nick and I have been noodling with the idea, if we talk to our community about a property tax levy and put it on the ballot in November. The deadline is in August, and our citizens have an opportunity to tell us yes or no if this is a good idea. And it's a way to create dedicated revenue that could be used for our parks. I don't know that this would succeed, in my opinion, and I think we need to do some outreach. We have till August to put this, to file a measure, and you guys would have to take a action in July. I've got it kind of half baked on this idea. It costs $10,000 to put it on the ballot with the city's cost. Deadline's August 2nd. And I gave you three options there. A $500,000 a year levy, $750,000 levy, and $1 million levy. And option two feels like the right number. We're asking the median price home for less than $10 a month. And in reality, when you look at what we're spending on our parks right now, I can give you this document, our budget this year for the personnel and what we spend on water and fertilizer and fuel is $850,000. So it doesn't put anything to capital at all. And I think it'd be tough if I was a voter. What am I getting beyond the status quo? I think what am I going to get in more parks? And we have an opportunity to apply for grants, and we have park impact fees. I would hope our citizens would tell me that, or tell us that the $1 million number, if we did this, I think we're still putting some general fund dollars into our park, because this $850 right now that we're spending comes out of our general fund. And this, what I have is a lead similar to what we have in sewer, water, and storm, creating a lead in that area, 2 laborers, and then in the summer months to have 2 summer hires because the grass grows like crazy in the summertime. And also, what would be more than what we have right now is when we build the community center, I'm envisioning there's the operations side of it and the sales side of it. The operations side of it, I think, is us. And I would hope with whoever's, we're going to put it out to bid, but it makes sense. Whoever's managing the Bremerton Conference Center is likely would be a good relationship for us for the sales side of it. And so the weddings, the big events, they're getting a commission on selling of an event, and we're not employing them because sales and operations are just 2 different animals. And the operations person is, you go to the community center. We get requests right now, those wonderful picnic shelters we have out at McCormick Village Park. People want to reserve them. I don't have anybody to manage a reservation system. So they're first come, first serve, and they want to do a big birthday party or, a reunion or that type of thing. And you just got to get there early and get the picnic shelter. I'd like to offer reserving meeting spaces, that type of stuff, would be the operational side of it. If we ended up with Veterans Park, there's soccer fields and baseball fields, and that scheduling of that needs to be managed. So that's my thought there, is potentially a measure on a ballot. And that's kind of a back of napkin, I think, what it would look like from a staff standpoint. And I'd like to see a small capital piece in this, and I need to do a lot more work on this if it's something you're interested in. Jay?
The question is, question is, so you're envisioning this ballot measure with taking over Veterans Park
As a piece of,
As a piece
it's
of it.
globally,
Right.
and
Okay.
I would
Right.
propose that we've been asking the county to fence, it'd be security improvements at Veterans Park would be part of this, is what I would want to do from a capital standpoint. We're running out of space at Public Works. I think we should build a building. If we had Veterans, let's say we ran a ballot measure and citizens says, heck yeah, we want this. And we own Veterans Park right now. I think where that RV is on that frontage right there is likely a parking lot, and we've got our maintenance and operations for our park system. The workers and our equipment is in there. And I wouldn't mind seeing a corner of that building carved out as a police substation. And so that they keep their bikes there. They got a place to use the restroom. It's not public, and writing reports and that kind of stuff. Kind of the model that when they were using your building.
At one point in time, I thought when we were looking at this, I thought there was a piece of Veterans Park that could also be, for lack of better words, sold out.
That was Nick Bond's dream.
Okay, that's fine.
And so my research, and Rob Gilder sent me all of the documents on Veterans Park.
Yeah.
It was granted in 1977 from DNR and it has to be maintained as and then since then, I want to say in the 90s or so, maybe early 2000, they did they got an RCO grant that built the fields and the public restrooms that are all closed now.
So my only comment then is.
So there's no opportunity to sell something off.
Yeah, is from talking to people that I know right now, without that, is until the county cleans it up,
Mhm.
there's like zero interest in city running. At least
And
my opinion.
I have no zero interest in taking on the problem.
So I'm saying is to think about if July is our deadline, they've got a lot of work to do.
I've been told, we're being recorded.
Yep.
By the end of April, it'll look different than it does today. And that's not officially out there. John and then Scott.
I'm not necessarily opposed. Well, I guess I have some reservation over why we would take it on. But I think my question or comment would be more in the issue of a ballot measure. I think that the city has a whole lot of needs. And that we really need to take a look at our overall, because I mean, there's been some suggestions about taking a sales tax issue to the voters to help support the streets.
Later in the, well, for capital, yeah.
There's only so much that the community can support if they're interested in it. I'm not trying to pick for them. It'd be nice if we could say, one or the other, but not having that ability, I think it's incumbent on us to figure out what's the most important need for Port Orchard today. And if asking the voters to help support funding for that need, where does a perks program, and sounds like I'm anti-parks, it's not that, but I guess compared to streets are way more important to me right now, maintaining our streets than our parks. It's not that I don't think we need to do things with our parks, but we just need to prioritize it, that's all.
It's a timing issue. And given the climate that we're in right now, I mean, the end of the pandemic, hopefully, the whole situation going on with the increase in fuel costs and all of that, what's gonna happen? I think we'd be foolish to do something like this right now. I mean, I think you're a visionary and I can see where you're going and I like it, but we've got to find out how everything settles. And I think this is not a priority. And I'm not even sure about the sales tax increase. You're already going with it for an increase in utility taxes. You know, there are going to be a lot of increases that people are going to have to be paying for this year. And I think you want to be really careful about putting too much of a burden on the citizens and the perception of what we're doing. To even the community center, people are looking at and kind of, do we really need that? Not everyone is as excited as we are about the community center. So I think this is a stretch. It's for down the road maybe, but I sure would not vote to approve, go with a ballot measure this year.
And I appreciate your perspective, and I'm just trying to present, I'm looking at the problems we have. in
I
the
get it.
community
I get
And
it.
trying to offer some solutions. I'm not saying that we should pass a resolution later this month to go put it on the ballot measure. But, and I really like John's perspective, you know, I got 3 different things where I'm looking to gather revenue, and we haven't gotten to the 3rd one yet. And operations or preservation and maintenance is one animal. And then there's traffic impact fees can help us with the capital side of our streets. It doesn't deal with existing deficiencies.
Right.
And so later on today, not very much later today, but in the next half hour, we're going to talk about something else in that realm. And I would propose potentially that we do some outreach, and Josh does great work with surveys, and we ask our community, is this a priority? You know, before we even start spending too much of our staff fees, what's our community think? Is it, if the city had the opportunity to take on Veterans Park, you know, to bring that into the city, would you support a ballot measure to fund a parks program, parks?
Yeah, and if I were to add something, I really like this. I'm not saying now's the right time, but I like having the data in front of us, right? Because this is a problem. And so at least it's nice that we're aware of, okay, this is a potential solution.
Right.
And the roads and whatever we get to later, then we can kind of have more discussion. It's great talking through it, just so we have the data and to your point, yeah, then from there we can do outreach and
And I'm going to get to
because
Scott.
parks in the future will be a problem.
Right.
We'll be faced with this problem
Yes.
before long because our city's growing and we have to maintain these facilities. So it's nice to know that this is a potential plan. Could be up.
And I thank your guys' support in how we're funding ours. We've never put $750,000 a year, and we brought on 2 beautiful parks in during my time as mayor, in McCormick Woods and downtown. And it's been my mission that those parks will be as beautiful as the day or beautifuler than the day we brought them in. You know,
No.
more beautiful. More beautiful. And it's a priority for me, because I think parks and open space are just so valuable to our community. But the unintended consequence or benefit to our general fund is, if our voters approve this and we're giving them something more, and it's also freeing up dollars for police officers and other things, and that there are also needs or paving our streets. So, John, I'm going to get to Scott here, and then Fred, and I'll come back to you.
So I don't disagree with what I've heard. I think it's going to be difficult to sell this in the face of other competing measures. But I just would like to remind people that ultimately, I think this has got great bones for an athletic facility. And if you haven't walked those parks, I would encourage you to go back. There's much more to it than what you see when you drive by.
Right.
And then also the parks survey showed that this was in the top, I think, 3 in terms of priorities for people
Until
that
you ask people
responded.
to pay for them.
Right, right.
Well,
So
that's where,
Okay.
that's the
That's
question.
just like
We're
wanting to
assuming-
YMCA. Do you want to pay for it?
Right.
Oh, no. That's
Yeah,
what
but
we
that's-
found
But
out.
that's why you go to the.
I haven't
voters.
had that
You find out. We're not forcing it,
Right,
their
right.
choice.
But
Yeah.
This is, we're talking about timing.
I understand.
Yeah.
We don't, yeah.
I'm just
We're
saying,
not saying
I'm
we're doing
asking
it
to
wrong.
ask the questions.
Yeah.
So Fred and then John.
Yeah, this is not the time for the city to take it over, because given our current staffing, I don't think the city would manage it any better than the county has.
We would never consider it unless our voters told us. they could.
Do we know how much the county has spent to maintain it at the level they have? I mean, do we have any idea? And that's just a rhetorical question, but if we did a Parks and Recreation, if we did a levy, I think it should be something other than this specific park, because I think it would fail.
Like a Parks District or what? do you-
Yeah, like a Parks
I don't think
District or
you, I
something.
don't think you heard me correctly. It isn't about, it's not solely about Veterans Park.
Okay.
It's all of our parks and a capital program. And that's what I'm saying. It needs to be, it's the community center and the open space there. It's all of our parks and creating a dedicated employees and revenue source for the maintenance and operations of our parks. And I believe it's got to have a capital component to it too, so that we're giving something more all the
Would
time.
it replace the revenue that's coming from the general fund?
Yes.
It would free up the revenue
Okay.
fund.
So
And
we'd be replacing it, but not giving it any more than we already have.
that's your guys' call. And I think that we owe it to our community. Well, we wouldn't need to put $850,000 a year into the parks. I think we're probably pledging $250,000 a year so that we're, doing that something more all the time, in my opinion. But you guys control the budget, not me. John?
No, I'm going back to and even in your surveys of the community, if you simply ask people, what's your interest in funding parks, would you fund it? That's very focused on one subject, whereas my point earlier was, what's the global issue? If you could ask the question, assuming that they had all the background information, would you support parks over, earlier we talked about, okay, public safety building?
Yeah.
How would you see the prioritization of these capital projects? And if you pick number one, are you willing to fund that? I mean, it's just that now you ask the question.
Yeah,
Correct.
Parks,
And I-
Parks will always land at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I disagree though. And I think, and it's how, you're right, that's how you phrase it. I think we would start with, what do you think, what is the biggest priority for you and our community? And we've got a menu of things from public safety and all of those things. And then we tumble to, if the parks, and so we're gathering that. When did you guys follow I touched on it briefly, the Portrait Independence survey?
Yeah.
Okay, and it was public safety, traffic, Veterans Park, and there was something else. 54% of the people said Veterans Park is the biggest problem in South Kitsap.
Problem.
Right.
Problem.
Problem. Now,
correct.
you gotta put it in perspective with what we would be asking them,
Yeah,
is our problem is parks.
yeah,
Not just veterans, but
Yeah,
parks.
parks,
We want to
right.
maintain, we want to build. Would you fund, we're not asking you, would you fund a solution to veterans, that's the thing.
Yeah.
But getting back to my point is that, one, the folks need to understand the background behind our question. It would be really hard to say, would you put a public safety building over a parks?
Right.
Well, if you ask me that question today, I'm going with parks.
And transportation.
I don't need a public safety building. I don't understand where is the need. So that's where I think partly this is our job, is to figure out what is the most pressing need for the city. Is it space and how do we deal with it? Is it the streets and how do we maintain it? Is it parks, whatever? And then in our funding strategies, here's an option, let's go back to the public. And I think the public is the one that makes a decision whether we think it's timing or not, excuse me, Cindy, but we need to ask the public and let them tell us, let's not make the decision for them. And
so, so in closing on this subject matter, are you comfortable, and I'll bring it back, the survey back before we launch it. Are you comfortable with me creating a survey in that context of, here are the challenges that Port Orchard faces, from traffic to, park funding and, the funding challenges, what is your,
I
What is
think
your
it's
top
great
priority?
As long as we're able to explain to them why these
Context.
items are on the list.
And then
Yeah.
there's no bias to the survey. There needs to be no bias. to it.
Right.
Well, and that they
Right.
understand that the park being on there is not about the cleanup,
no, it isn't, it's.
but that's what they'll think right now.
Well,
Well, how you
they
can
won't,
explain it.
because it's not, we're not gonna go anywhere with this until the park's cleaned up, okay? And that was the premise of the conversation I had with Commissioner Gilder. When we have the park cleaned up, okay, so that's step one, the park being cleaned up, and it's not a homeless encampment, and it's a park again. And once it is,
Operating as a park.
are you interested in taking this park over and operating it? And I said, I would bring it here and talk about this. And after I had that conversation, I thought about it. There's no way we could ever do that because as Scott, it's huge. It's got all kinds of fields and my back a napkin analysis of staffing might not be the right answer. We got a lot more work to do. And as I started looking at the money side of it, it's probably got to be $1 million a year levy to be meaningful. And because our community, and we won't know until we ask the question. And I'm trying not to be we can't be biased in our question or our survey.
Yeah, and
Right.
just provide the information, because again, as you suggest right now, traffic is pretty high, people's mind.
Mhm.
Public safety is.
Public
always pretty
safety,
high on their mind,
traffic.
So they're just gonna take based on what they know, but if you would compare, here's your options, fix Bethel
Mhm.
or support a parks plan, I can pretty much guarantee you that the majority of the answers should be fix Bethel.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm hopeful in the next couple of years, they tell us to do both.
I-
We won't know until we ask.
And that might be the situation, if we could figure out a way that we can ask the voters to do both.
Mhm. And we can't put them both on the same November ballot, and I've got that,
Right.
that's coming very quickly. And I'd like to move, so is there support for myself to work on a survey that I'll bring back to you guys to bless? And then we're gonna ask
Yeah.
questions about what the priorities are and whether or not there's interest in a parks levy. And then we'll take that and develop a plan, but we gotta get it done by July. And that for all intents and purposes, and step one is the county cleaning up the park. Good with that, from a policy directive?
yeah, the only,
That's mine.
this may not even do it. Problem I have when we talk about different parks and stuff. And
Those are all
people
my
priorities is to try to like some money. And sometimes I don't think that the public may realize that, you know, is this, how do you put that out to them? By that, I mean.
What's gonna be in that survey and the communication? This is a property tax. And the Bethel funding solution is a sales tax, and it's a broader audience
Right.
than this, which is just our citizens
Okay.
for the city of Porter. Okay. All right. Look at that. What did I have park impact fees? I got this. Well, you know, I just wanted to share, and I threw it in the document. Those inflation beat. So you recently, this was related, and it's this document with the green banner on it. You saw some numbers earlier that were less than this for the proposed park impact fee. But Mr. Beckworth worked on that for a year, and inflation's been running just nuts. So we applied inflation to those numbers. So these are the numbers Nick is going to bring forward in the discussions going forward. And these are the numbers, that percentage, you can play, if you want that number to go down, then you'll inform us to alter that percentage and make it less, which will lower the impact fee, which means new development is going to pay a smaller portion than our existing citizens for
yeah.
new capital programs and for our parks. And I wouldn't advocate for that, but you may not be comfortable with these dollars. And so I'm just making you aware, and it's something to take home to look at.
It's sticker shock, but so is everything now.
Yeah. Well, and we're doing our community a disservice if we make it, if we've got this grand capital program and we don't put enough dollars to it, it won't happen. You know, and we've got some big park impact fees I see as part of our funding solution for the construction of the pathway, the plaza at the community center, part of the funding source for the community center itself. And I'm picking off the big ones. There's a lot of stuff in the plan. Phase 3 of McCormick Village Park, and we owe our community a new park out in the city south area to replace Howard Park. And it'll be part of that stormwater facility that if we have a full property.
Could I just ask that, and I appreciate this great information that we need to, but could you also provide us with a listing of all of the different impact fees that we charge to each park?
Okay.
Just so we can see and it's how
How
much
much
is street, how much parks, how much is.
That'd be good
It's
information.
huge.
I don't know, and then, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, we still have a parks fee that we gotta deal with, regardless of what that is, but it was.
Nice to know, totally.
It is. So Mark was there. I spoke at the Chamber of Commerce, and that was one of the questions, you know, gosh, the fees to build a house have gotten really expensive. And I said, well, growth is putting demands on our roads, our parks, our water and sewer systems. And if we don't have impact fees to cover for the cost of this infrastructure, then we're asking our existing citizens to pay for this stuff. And that's not fair. The people that are buying a new home here and causing the impacts have to pay their fair share. It's growth paying for growth. But I'm preaching to the choir there. All right, relevant conversation. The traffic, and there's no handout for this, the traffic, I would like to consider, and it won't be this year, I would hope in 2023, and we're gonna need to do some outreach about this, that we consider a ballot measure for a transportation benefit district. So car tabs are for maintenance and operation. This would be for capital, and this would be for existing deficiencies. One in particular, the Bethel corridor. And we're hiring that consultant because Bethel corridor at yesterday's dollars was 52 or $54 million. We can only put this in place for 20 years. And I think there was a bill that passed the year that lets us renew it. But I'm not 100% sure that passed. So our voters could impose a 1/10 sales tax over 20 years. It would generate in today's sales tax dollars, $32 million. And we couldn't fix all of Bethel, but the data derived from the consultant's report would tell us where we would get the most bang for our buck. My gut tells me it's the Lund Bethel intersection and the Walmart light and feeding everybody to Tremont and getting them off all that corridor. But we're gonna have a report to tell us that. I'm willing to bet that we might even be able to get Seminary into this. But it doesn't do any good to fix Bethel if and try to funnel traffic to Sedgwick when Sedgwick isn't necessarily our responsibility.
I think you should just put an inflation calculator in here. If you just increase this by 3% a year, right? It's just inflationary. I think that'll probably be way conservative, but that number is going to double if you do that.
I think we're gonna do this. We're gonna hire a consultant to do that, you know, instead of Rob back a napkin and
Right.
asking Noah some
That's
numbers that we're gonna come.
Way more than $32 million over 20 years.
Yeah, we're gonna put a lot of work into a very informed package that we're gonna ask the voters. So the beauty, why this is fair, we're not asking our 16,000 citizens to pay for fixing Bethel. We're asking the 70,000 people that live in South Kitsap who shop on the Bethel corridor to help us fix Bethel. And that's my argument.
But who votes on that? Just the
Only
city?
our citizens. It's our road, John.
We could put it forward. One of the, and then just to follow up with Scott's comment, or Sean's comments about inflationary factor, I'm assuming though that for us to really full advantage of it, we would commit this to like a bond or a loan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's interest that we would be paying over that
Sure.
32 or 20-year period, so we need to.
Yep.
I appreciate what you're saying, is bring on a professional to really look at both sides of that equation.
Yes, absolutely. So is there, and this wouldn't be a now project, but it's got to, we're going to hire, soon you're going to see the consultant to tell us what the biggest priorities for Bethel are, to inform our grant, finding grants. And I think from there, we hire a consultant to inform what this looks like. And I think we could find out in the survey that this is the biggest priority and that we should be doing this before we're doing other
Well, and we
things.
need to make sure too, like you were alluding to, there was discussion about changes to the whole transportation benefit district methodology and how long. I think they were talking at one point too, that how much council matting we could do with parks and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure what all, if any, of the changes were. We need to know that as well.
The sales tax still requires a vote of the people.
Yeah, the sales tax was always one that was there for voter approval, but there were some also things that we need to understand what we can do with council matting versus.
And if we're not comfortable with all of that utility tax, I mean, we could take another bite, we can double the car tab and get half of what I'm looking for. So maybe it's your call. Do we, councilmatically, you could charge a $50 car tab instead of a $25 car tab. Or do we want to do it, I think the glaring shortfall is we need more money for street paving.
Yeah,
And how do we get there?
one of the options.
That'd be
Okay,
great,
so-
once we're all done with this session, take all of these funding ideas and put them all on
Yeah.
one paper, so we can see them all together.
That's
Yeah.
Sophie over here.
Great, thank you.
So I'm here, but
By the
this
end
would
of the
be a
day.
policy director
Yeah.
about the
Yes.
hiring consultant to inform the
It's too large a
possibility of
mess.
a TBD.
Yeah, it might be.
Absolutely.
Sales tax.
Yeah.
measure.
So
It's just nice to know it's in the future.
Right,
We're gonna have to
exactly.
address it at some
Which
point.
is.
But everything that's being brought up right now
Okay,
is priority, just, and we're gonna have to do them.
Yeah,
It's a
Right.
matter of-
let's pull, it's exhibit
Take
C,
it-
if you could pull
An
that up.
example of the school levy costs and what that looked like.
So let's go to this map. Eric Baker, Nick Bond, and Commissioner Brito had a meeting. I wouldn't say it went well. But we've agreed to do some outreach in related to this, relationship to this. There's a new method for annexation that was approved a year ago that allows us to do it via an ILA with the county and to do an annexation. For those that Jay and I know are intimately and so aware, as Sophie is too, because she works at KRCC, for KRCC for Triangle. We're in the midst of our population allocation process. And we're hearing that Bainbridge, believe it or not, and Paulsboro are wanting a larger share.
Wow.
So us, Kingston, Paulsboro, and Bainbridge Island are all high capacity transit city or areas or whatever they're called. Because Kingston's not a city. So there's a pocket, there's a bucket of population that has to be divided up amongst us. If their numbers are granted, the county will need to take it from somewhere. And that would likely mean shrinking our UGA. And it would likely, the undeveloped land in this picture in our UGA is Bethel South. And that's very troubling to me because that is our future growth area for commercial and light industrial. And we should not probably allow that happen. They aren't going to give us the commercial without taking some residential. So this is the map we floated. On the west side of Highway 16, you see the purple, the green, and the blue. Those are just pockets of UGA that are surrounded by the city, they're islands, and that are opposed to being, the one we're most interested in is the green. Of those three, we're really indifferent about the other two, other than the purple is a industrial land. We kind of like to have that, but the blue is just something out there off of Glenwood that they opposed the last time when the McCormick folks came in. They didn't want any part of it. And, I think we need to, so we're gonna do a mailer, create a website, and you're gonna get an opportunity to every parcel in this map is gonna get a postcard and a fact sheet about what it means, what your taxes are as a county resident, what it would look like, and the benefits of joining the city, and are you in favor or opposed? In Bethel South, the I don't know, what is that? The rust colors and brown there. I know that the people the farthest south would like to join the city, but there's a whole bunch of people in between them that for them to gather enough petitions, that nobody's willing to do that work. And so this is probably the highest priority for the city is this and the green. We'd like probably over here in the pink, it kind of chopped off on the map that runs over into Mile Hill. We're not so excited about the rest of it, but we're willing to take it to try to create some equity with the county. So we're not just cherry picking. So this is what we floated. Nick and I floated on Thursday or Wednesday with the county. And Commissioner Rita wants lots of public meetings beyond the requirement. We've agreed that we would do this survey. If she wants to have those meetings, she's welcome to have those. We need to have, really, this needs to be agreed to in principle probably by summer as part of the KRCC process. And I would say if we did this, the implementation, so we're not worried about revenue sharing and who's doing services, that it took effect January 1st, and then we would get the property tax. So this generates $330,000 if we took all of this we're not going to make any money on this. So it's $330,000 in property tax. And if we imposed utility taxes on these areas, some of them that wouldn't have them currently, I think we would go in saying the city has utility taxes and this is what they would be. It's another 220. So
What's the
about half of them.
population today in there? What's the population that would be absorbing?
Nick told me, I think it's 2,000 people in all of it and about 800 jobs because the school district headquarters is in that, the transportation center. And then some jobs going up on Mile Hill. It'd be a wild guess what sales tax is. There's Arrow Lumber out on Bethel. We got West Bay Auto Parts and some retail along Mile Hill. It's probably not huge. I'd say $100,000, a year or so. So, I mean, it's going to require a police officer.
What's the crime stats? That's what.
Yeah,
the first question
I'm just gonna
is.
tell you, we're gonna spend every dollar we get from this annexation on people to serve
Yeah.
this population.
How
This
many
additional
miles of
population.
roads?
And the roads and all of that. That's right. But if we aren't proactive in this, I'm seeing that the UGA is gonna get shrunk and our upside is controlling, county zoning is extremely restrictive in this area. We would zone this differently and allow for things that the county isn't allowing currently and likely see development fees and then additional sales tax.
So you had said the conversation didn't go well. And was it just because of the outreach portion or is?
Just a typical meeting.
No, okay, so it wasn't whether she was in favor or not about these properties. It was just kind of like.
The comment was made, this is a lot of information. It's the first time I've seen it.
Yeah.
And
got it.
it wasn't,
No, I got it.
that's all I'll say.
Are the other commissioners indifferent toward it or are they supportive?
I had one of them reach out to me. I'm sorry, the meeting didn't go well. If you need me help
Thank
and
you. Okay, I'm good. I'm good.
so we can get there.
Yeah.
This is how much of a process we're gonna have to go to make everybody happy. We agreed, and Nick, so here's my other challenges. If we're gonna get serious about this, Nick's staff and their bandwidth, we're gonna talk, Nick and I talked about his junior planner. If we assign this to her, Nick and I are gonna do 80% of the work and whether we can pull that off, whether we have the bandwidth. And if we could get a consultant to do the outreach and the body of work for $10,000 or less, might be worth it. And we don't know that I can get it done for that, but we're evaluating, can we do this the way we need to do it? Because the last thing we want to do is do this not right. We send these surveys out and everybody tells us, hell no, I don't want anything to do with this. And then it doesn't work.
What's the downside if we would say, you were suggesting that this going to change to the areas, what would that look like?
Well, the only undeveloped land is the Bethel South, and that's where I see it being shrunk.
So that portion is these colors down here
Would
would
be
come out of the
UGA and be down zoned.
So the concept of us annexing that would be to protect that area. to be able to
We're
be
protecting our
developed.
interests, that's right.
But we would be accepting all these other potential sites.
Are you talking about this area here?
That's already in the city.
Where are you saying? we would
Orange
get-
and brown.
Orange and brown is
No,
where,
no, I know that, but where would we be retracted?
in the orange and brown. Our UGA would go,
That's in the county right now.
That's county, and that's our UGA.
Right.
And if they shrink the UGA, I believe that's where they'll shrink their UGA.
Would we lose all of it or just a portion of it? Just out of
We
curiosity.
don't know. All of it's at risk. It's not our
Yeah.
decision.
But we
If
do
it
pick
comes
up,
out of the UGA, we can't annex it.
Correct.
Right.
but we do pick up a large number of jobs, I mean, huge.
But we're also taking some of these other areas that have an ongoing liability.
That's true.
So that's all I'm just trying to.
We just try to, if you're opposed to, partly it's truing up kind of the borders.
Yeah,
So it's not jogging around as much.
Oh, thank God.
And, I'm trying to present a fair proposal to the county. Go ahead.
Is the difference with the ILA is that the property owners don't actually vote on whether they
Correct.
want it or not, so that's why the input is desired, I guess.
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Still gonna pull the rookie card here. What the heck does ILA mean?
Interlocal agreement.
Say that
Good
again.
question, Mark. Thank you.
Say that again?
Interlocal agreement. So
Interlocal
two government agencies enter into an agreement. It's called an ILA, interlocal
Okay,
agreement.
so thank you for that. I'm concerned about that Bethel South area. That is a very prime area for growth, and business type growth, industrial type growth. I think we should look to try to keep that whatever we can.
Is it possible that the areas would be favorable for an annexation, except maybe the pink area? And so we would only take the other 5? Would that ever happen, do you think? No.
I don't know that the county would, if we're not taking some population too, I don't think, the response I got was a little hesitant even with this map. And we said, well, if you want to see something different, get back to us.
Well, the option you could do to try to do that would be to have some sort of a PR campaign, get everybody in there and have them elect to come in. Right, then we wouldn't need an ILA.
And I've talked to some of those businesses, and like I said, the folks to farthest to the south would love to come into the city. It's the folks in the middle. And then we can't create an
What are
island.
the terms
What's
of
the
an
ILA
ILA?
do for
Yeah,
us?
that's what I was asking.
It allows for the annexation. It's a transfer.
Well, you're talking about a legislative action, not a vote of the people.
Correct.
Right, the ILA.
Okay, so getting everybody on board to some extent. Why? If it's a legislative action, other than everybody coming down with it.
Because that's what's being asked of us.
Yeah,
Well,
I certainly appreciate the options of it, but I'm looking at it from a technical.
That was
standpoint.
Eric Baker's comment.
That's just to keep people from
He-
showing up
he's-
in the county commissioners meeting saying, don't do this.
He's parroting what Garita would want, which is as much outreach as possible.
Well, he didn't have it. He's, when I was trying to tell Commissioner Rito, well, we hear these areas don't want to come into the city, Eric actually countered and saying, they really don't have a say.
Right.
It was his comment, it was John's comment, and I think we need to be somewhat respectful. I mean, this blue here is on the corner of the area. It's people with horses and things and farm animals that they didn't want, you know, so what? Like I said, the green is truly an island.
Yeah. That makes
And
the
it's,
most sense.
it's a problem for county road meet staff. They're sending a plow out in the middle of it. We want to clean that up.
Beyond the ILA being the mechanism, but there's no other terms associated with the ILA that. binds us.
Depends on what you negotiate in the ILA. What the two sides ask for. There could be an ask for revenue sharing. I would oppose that unless there was, if it was a phased revenue sharing, then there needs to be a phase to the services provided.
Was
That
there
was-
any of that discussion with me?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I didn't offer it and it wasn't asked for.
Okay.
Well, one of the concerns, or not a concern, I guess. You go out and you point to this blue area where people that live there have horses and all that stuff, and they go out there and say, hey, this is what's being considered, and they say, hell no.
Mhm.
So then would we change our approach to the county and say, we don't want you to legislatively bring them into the city?
It's a negotiation and
Well, I
we
mean,
asked to listen to the citizens. That was Commissioner Dorito's.
and I appreciate where she's coming from, and I don't have any opposition to it, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the process. You talked about the green, makes all sense, because it's an island and county has to maintain and blah, blah, blah. Makes sense to me logically, but we're gonna run out and ask those people, and if the two people that live there say, I don't want you, then we say,
And then we
we're
don't
gonna
do
take it
it.
out.
Right.
So that, you know, that could be the approach. Here's what I know. This is brand new. No, I don't know. I'm sure somebody's done it out there in the state of Washington. It hasn't been done in Kitsap County. The legislature could take this tool away. If we aren't good stewards of the process, that could happen. I think we owe it to the citizens
I'm not arguing that.
or our potential citizens to not bring hostility to our community.
I totally agree, but it's, now we're going back to one of the regular routine ways of managing the city is we go out and we sell the benefits of the city and then they make the decision
Yeah.
and through an election it happens.
Yeah.
We're trying to do a hybrid.
Well,
It's
but
almost-
in that other methodology, we have to gather signatures on a petition versus just asking the question, informing people. And then if, depending on the feedback we get, we maybe modify the map.
It almost sounds like we want to present them with what we think is a good solution and give them the opportunity to opt out.
Well,
No,
it
that's
is,
the wrong
except
words.
we're gonna give them that opportunity to opt out without doing it through an election. We're just gonna say, we hear.
Or
If we don't hear from
The
you,
squeakiest wheels and come forward and say, we're not interested, that might make it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The county and the city could agree to take the blue, I'm just picking on blue right now, and they really don't have a voice.
Right, and that's the legislative process.
Yes.
You know, so, I mean, my feeling is, hey, I think we should go ahead with this, I'm comfortable.
This is the proposal that Nick and I made.
Yeah.
And I'm just making you aware of it. I think this is a fair proposal. And I didn't see anybody go, well, you know, I mean, the pink, we're not excited about the pink. It was trying to be fair.
Mhm.
You know, and so that it wasn't a one-sided offer we made.
I like the jobs.
So Mayor, would the policy directive be just to further explore the possibility of this or do the survey?
I think we're comfortable with doing a survey and
Yeah.
pursuing this process, you know,
Survey.
Thank you.
and conduct, I guess, conduct
What
public
the
outreach.
value of the
The survey,
responses of
public
the survey.
Public
would be.
outreach in relationship to an annexation.
I'm not
Yep.
really warm and fuzzy about the pink area, but
Here's another way to approach this too. It's like, really green, right? But that should just be done because it's just makes zero sense,
Out of
right?
all of them, yeah.
Right, so we shouldn't even ask the question because look at the burden it puts on, you know, just our county and city as a whole. So the other thing you could do is you could survey the entire city and say, look, we're trying to look to the future of our city. These areas have a lot of value to us. What do you think entire city about engaging in an ILA and doing this and not just focusing on these areas? Because you know what I mean?
But
It's
I
just the
agree with
future
you,
of the
but
city.
I agree with you. but,
Because if they
you know,
say
I'm
no,
trying to-
well, what are we gonna do?
I'm trying to justify in my mind, you know, how we come up with these, yeah, you mentioned the green area, it's an island. Well, there's actually a bigger island,
Yeah, but that's not in the UGA.
that section of Clifton Road between city limit and city
Nope,
limits.
it's not in our UGA. They fought, this Harless Island, I was in the process when that was created. It's ridiculous.
Island, is that it?
Jerry Harless.
Yeah, okay.
Isn't that the purple?
No,
No.
that's not Brook
No.
Road.
No, it's this area between, Old Clifton Road and Berry Lake,
It's
this
right from the
area.
juvenile detention
City
center up
stops
to
here.
Very
Yeah.
Berry Lake.
Yeah.
That island is, it's not in our UGA. Will
Yeah,
never be part of our city.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is what it is. Okay, Sophie's kicked me under the table again. Special events. I know Sydney's been feeling some of this heartburn. And really all this is information. We've got 4 things in our community that are grandfathered that we're going to pay for the cost for, or the overtime for our police department and our public works department. And they're chimes and lights, the 4th of July, fireworks, the parade, and the car show. Those are the 4 that are remaining out there that I'm aware of. And I'm just giving you an idea of what those events are costing the city and our general fund. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Rob, haven't we modified those events? I.e., now we're starting to say, no, we can't, whatever it is, traffic control, now that's your problem.
I'll get to that.
Okay,
So I'm getting there.
all right.
So we are our police department isn't asking in the planning process to modernize the way we plan for these events. And what we've implemented last year and this year is no different than what happens in the city of Bremerton. And where our chief learned this is in Paulsbo, and it's how Paulsbo plans for their events. It's just how you should do this for the protection of our community.
But-
We lack the manpower for us to do traffic control at these events.
So the idea of these events being grandfathered is not really grandfathered anymore, it's a modified grandfather.
And you could change that. The planning aspect of it, we can't plan their events for them, and we need them to plan their events, okay?
Yeah.
The traffic control aspect of it. Now, let me back up here. If your event's under 1,000 people and you don't close a street, go forth and do good. There's no planning required. Just go have your event. It's these big events that we have to make sure we have enough Santa cans, wash stations. Those are public health issues. And when we close the roads, you've got to have traffic control plans and at the conflict points to potentially have flaggers, okay? The option that we provided is, and the car shows totally on board with it, doesn't have any problems with it all, is absolutely, I've talked to them personally, Sydney. They have
How long ago?
Last week?
It was after our event, our discussion.
Yeah,
You
I've
guys
talked to them
I-
personally.
I found
They
that
have
very.
no problem
interesting.
at all with this. They did it last year and have no problem at all with it. The only person, it's one person that is bucking this process,
And with what event?
Fathoms of Fun,
Okay.
okay? It's one person.
You know, in that particular situation, if I understand it correctly, there's like 2 events going on simultaneously. There's a car show that is in the
That's-
parking lot and the Fathoms event, which is up here.
And that's a slightly separate conflict than what I'm describing here. There is, those on the Economic Development Committee heard loud and clear that they don't like the vendor fair in the middle of the street. It kills their businesses.
Who
And
doesn't like that?
The existing.
The merchants,
Vendors.
our merchants,
Yeah.
our merchants came and said,
Okay.
we don't like, it kills our businesses. They put their booths in front of our door fronts. And
No one comes.
we had our worst sales day of the year on that day. And we have all these people here. It's just, So that's between Fathoms and the car show to work out where that vendor fair exists, but the merchants are saying, we don't like it there. That's an ancillary issue. All we're asking is they properly plan for their event. And if they need traffic control, that they either train their volunteers, which it's, I don't know, 50, 75 bucks to get your certification to do that, which that's what the Saints folks have done. If you can't do that, then there's companies out there that will do it for you. And so that's the ask of our police department. We do it, the chimes and lights, all of that is done because that is truly a city event. That's taken care of. We didn't ask anybody we didn't ask Councilmember Lucarelli to go out and flag traffic.
It was $6,539 that we paid
Correct.
RCE for traffic control during that event,
Right, the city paid for it. Though.
which comes out of our budget. I mean, the city paid
Well,
for
you
it as
guys
the
set the-
citizens.
You guys set the budget, right?
Well, we didn't used to have to pay that. So
Because
there's been a
we
big
didn't-
change.
It was
Because
always- It was always a cost.
we paid our officers overtime.
Yeah, but we didn't have to pay this.
Well,
It
we
was-
had to
it
pay
was-
our public works people, we had to pay our police
Yeah.
department.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
always
it was
a cost,
always
Cindy,
there.
but it
We're just
just
paying
never
for it
was.
differently.
Well, we were always
Oh,
paying for
it's
the
budgeted.
services anyway.
We're
through
being
the
transparent
salaries.
about it.
Through
That's
what?
what we're
Through the
doing.
salaries.
Yeah, right, that's what we're doing now. It's just that it's identifying how much.
Now it's
We're being
our
transparent.
Is being charged through this event.
Okay, so here's the deal. The RCE will no longer do traffic control for
There
us,
was-
okay?
Okay.
So that's the problem, is that we no longer
But-
have any,
Correct, okay.
RCE.
How many, we know that we have a problem with police officers. We need our police officers at these events being police officers and dealing with crowd control or those type of issues.
Okay.
It is not a good resource to have our police officers flagging traffic at an intersection. They're expensive, they're really expensive to have them doing that, and we don't have enough of them. So if we have a problem, like they had in Paulsbo, who's responding? Because all of our police officers are required to be at these 5 intersections. We need to have somebody that's either a flagger or a contract flagger out there doing that function. It's not something that I believe our police officers should be doing. That's a poor use of resources because they are our most expensive employees. Mark?
I will make a comment on that, though. Earlier on in this event today, we talked about our police people doing more public outreach. That's a perfect time for them to be doing public outreach, is when they are out there at these events, perhaps
Yeah, and Mark,
But
flagging.
not if
We-
they're
we-
monitoring it.
We are at those events
Yeah.
and we staff up, but it's walking around and
Right.
being in those events and not flagging.
Not flagging.
If you're flagging, you're not talking to people, you're working.
So I get it, Sid, you're saying, yes, our event is being charged, but you just need to present a budget and you guys approve those budgets. And if that's the priority, you're gonna fund it.
well, we're just one event. And so there are other, I am very surprised to hear that the car folks said that everything's fine because just a week or so ago, we did not hear that at all. And they were very concerned about that additional charge that they had to take on, $300 for a traffic plan, and then the additional costs, which could be $65,000 to
But
$7,000.
why would we pay that for a private event? Why would we do that? It's their event.
Well,
No, it hasn't been charged heretofore. This is a new expense and it wasn't vetted. All of a sudden, out of the clear blue sky, these people had to go out and get these traffic plans and hire this outside firm. Now,
And that's, so backing up to the first, we are the only community that wasn't asking for a plan related to your event. If
which
you
is
don't have a-
great, which is great. You know what? It's how it was handled. Okay, and it wasn't handled well. You've got these nonprofits scrambling now, and they were back and forth last year. Can we have an event? Can't we? That was part of the pandemic.
That was
too, et cetera.
COVID, it wasn't.
I get that, but this is really difficult for them to manage these. And why I even have this put on the agenda is, do we still have a priority in this town to have events or not? Are we going to make it so difficult for the nonprofits to put these events on that, they won't happen anymore? We have to decide that. That's part of what we have to decide.
I believe we want to have events, but we have to have events that are planned for properly and are safe.
Well,
And
you know,
that's-
and then we're
define
not
safe though,
subsidizing.
define safe, because you can, we can sanitize everything, right, Rob? And you know what? You're gonna find some way to some crazy person to get in here and do damage. You can never make it safe. You really can't. You can't make it completely safe.
We can make it as safe as.
Make it safer.
I know,
safer.
I hear all this. I hear all
Well, we can try, I think the issue that, and I was at the same event that Cindy was, I think the main issue there was it seemed like the city went from 0 to 100
We hired an.
in a very short period of time, and the presentation was terrible, quite frankly, to these nonprofits, and they're still reeling from it. There was something, I can't remember the specifics, but I think it might have been Fathoms, where they had to have an ungodly number of Santa cans come in.
That's public health, not us.
Yeah, but
But
it's so
it was-
extreme, Rob, that you would have Santa cans like how many feet apart?
Yeah, it
All the
was-
way
it
down.
was-
It's public health, it's not
No,
us.
no. It's an interpretation of how many we need and the ultimate figure of,
I completely disagree that is being driven by Kitsap Public Health. And how many people you have, it's a math formula on how many Santa cans you have to have. That is not the city of Port Orchard driving that, it is Kitsap Public Health. And one of the
These are-
education
there are
pieces,
guidelines. There are FEMA Santa can guidelines.
okay?
Guidelines.
And Kitsap Public Health is telling us what they want, not the city of Port Orchard.
Follow the guidelines.
It's so extreme. I'm not sure that they even have enough porta potties around here, or that you would, if you
I
string them
can
all.
guarantee you that Seafair has
25.
a lot of porta potties
Oh, shit.
and public restrooms. That is Kitsap Public Health driving how many sanitation stations and
Here's the other
Santa
interesting thing is in the 6 years I've been on council, right, downtown is changing, it has changed. And these events downtown are becoming more and more and more of an issue, right? All the things, we're trying to close roads, the businesses are more upset, it's just like, at some point, we might have to look at other venue alternatives, I mean, I look at, the Circuit of the Northwest up there by the airport, right? What an amazing facility to have certain types of events where you don't have any of these traffic problems, you don't have nearly the safety problems, you don't have, they've got all the parking in the world, you can park 10,000 cars in there, right? So like at some point too, we should, as we continue to grow down here, it's community center opens up and Kitsap Bank and maybe condominium units, we're not gonna be able to close Bay Street anymore.
so, but I addressed that earlier. Chief has told me if it's under 1,000 people and you're not closing the street, go forth and do good. We don't need a plan. We don't need anything from you. Go have your event. It's when you start putting pedestrians and automobiles in conflict with each other, and we have more than 1,000 people, that's when we have to start having plans. And the bigger the event, the more robust the planning process needs to be. And some of these events, and our event holders are very guilty of, and we tried to educate them on putting numbers for their crowd that are far bigger than the crowd that they draw, because they're trying to compete for LTAC dollars. And be realistic about your crowd. It's your peak. We don't care that you're gonna have 10,000 people over 3 days. On what is your peak, we're managing to that peak crowd, that 3,000 people at 2 o'clock on Saturday. That's what we're planning for in our manpower and our staff.
To me, I'm hearing almost like three different issues, at least for my
But
perspective.
they
First off, the
are
issue we're planning,
embellished, they're hurting themselves by over embellishing.
the issue of planning is a function that I think is necessary. Who's gonna argue that we shouldn't have good traffic control? I mean, that's a no-brainer. Even to the extent of the number of Santa cans, if this is what the standard is, then here's what we need to do. The other issue, kind of playing on Sean's comments a minute ago, I guess we need to, as a group, decide how important are these events to our community?
Exactly.
Because if they're not important to our community, then go out to the airport. I don't care.
Well.
Let me finish.
Okay.
If they are important to our community, then we need to start looking at, how can we best facilitate something like this to the extent that we're responsible for as a city. If we're not responsible for, the Fathoms putting on the parade, if you guys can't comply with the traffic issues and the safety issues that have been identified, I'm sorry. We also have a responsibility to our merchants when we talk about Cozy Bay Street. If our merchants come up and tell us that none of these events benefit us, then we're back to, okay, they don't benefit you, but do they benefit the rest of the community sufficiently enough that we can make you suffer for a day? I mean, those are the things that we've been hired to make those kinds of decisions. But one, I agree with Cindy and Mark's comment, and I'm going to blame it on COVID or maybe our police chief. We really have changed significantly in how we approach these community events without much forewarning. It was just flip the switch. And now you guys, even though you've been planning this, you have for every year for the last umpteen years, now there's another piece that you have to deal with, and it's your responsibility. You need to do it, and don't call me until you get picked out.
And I've worked to soften that.
Yeah, and now that it's kind of in place and we can better explain why these have come in. But then I get back to this issue of, these grandfathered events. If we don't want them, then we need to make that decision. But if we do, we've made a major change even with those events. Now, in the case of Chimes and Lights, it's just a matter of what checkbook it came out of City Hall to go to do this. That's no biggie, but when you're talking about an event that has been planned, and I'm gonna pick on the Fathoms again, they plan on how much it takes, what's the responsibility for putting on a parade. And now at the last minute, we come running to and say, oh, by the way, you need to fulfill all these things. That's a bit of a challenge.
And that's why we're having these meetings now. And we're in these planning meetings. So going forward, as you guys passed the resolution last year, I believe, or maybe the year before, because we didn't do much in events last year. Anytime we close Bay Street, it comes before City Council.
Yeah.
You guys get to weigh in on that. And like I said, as long as you're not closing the street, there isn't an issue. And as long as your event's under 1,000 people, which is the lion's share, there's only really 4 big events. And there's only one group that's not on board with what we're asking for. And I've had conversations with the car club multiple times. And they have my cell number. So if they had a problem, I certainly hope.
Well, then we're both hearing from them.
Huh?
We're both hearing from them.
Okay. And I talked to, what's the guy who was showing Wilkins?
Roger.
Roger?
I talked to Roger a week ago.
So
And
you-
shortly after, Rob and I had a conversation shortly after that meeting we came from, and sounded like it was a completely different tune that we were hearing versus what Rob was.
What
Talking
meeting were
about.
you guys at?
It's a special meeting just for people involved in events.
What was it, economic development?
No, it wasn't.
No, it was,
Called by Kareem. POPSA.
Oh, it was a
Stakeholders.
It was a
With
special
stakeholders
event, then,
meeting.
that's what it was.
Mhm.
the chief's been trying, and Mark have been trying to hold these stakeholder meetings just to get everybody on board. Here's what we're trying to do. I don't disagree that when Matt came on board and part of it, we weren't doing, we were shutting events down, and the ones we did do a couple of years ago, it was a paradigm shift. It really was. And this came from what he learned in Paulsbo and how they plan for events. And I asked the question, I said, were the only ones doing it? He goes, no, it's the way Bremerton does it. This is the way Paulsbo does it. This is where I learned it.
For many, many years, and just because we did it that way doesn't make it important, but for many, many years, traffic control was done by the reserves. Now, we still have a police
We don't
reserve
have
program or
reserves.
not,
The training requirements now with all the laws changes have made it.
so the government departments have successfully closed that park in, so I'm going to fire department still work, but anyway. And it's been years since I paid attention to, like the Armed Forces Day Parade in Bremerton. They have police officers at all the intersections controlling traffic for that parade, so.
We got a few more items and Shoki's gonna cut me off in 15 minutes. 'cause we got other things to do.
So the only other comment I wanted to add, besides the list that John gave was, because this came up at LTAC last year, because of the requirements, was the fact is the additional financial burden that it was posing. Not only for battles, but also for the other events. And that was a driving force. And it's, I hate to say it, but I agree where we want to have our assets, and I don't want our police out doing traffic control when there's enough other stuff to do right now. If we had enough, I feel great, but we don't.
And we're utilizing mutual aid on these bigger events. It's not just our officers. We're bringing in other communities' officers, and in return, we're agreeing to pay overtime for our officers to go work their events.
Is
Is
that
that,
technically a gifting of?
no, it's called, we have mutual aid agreements with
Okay.
our neighboring jurisdictions. So when
No,
Bremerton
okay.
and Paulsville has events,
I
we
thought
can,
for our
we
event.
can get there.
Okay.
It's past, there's community benefit. But
Safety.
Mayor, before we move on, would this be a policy directive or is this just a discussion?
I think it was a discussion. I don't know that there's,
I didn't hear any policy.
I'm just making, this was just the dollars and cents. I'm just making you guys aware of what it's costing. It's about $10,000. $10,000 to $12,000 for most of these events. Chimes was 16. In
Have we
city,
changed our minimum staffing requirements for these events? Do we now have to have 10 police officers instead of?
it's driven, it's data driven on the size of the event and the peak of the crowd.
So is that something that's changed, or is that something that we've always had?
I think
When
we're
you
having,
mentioned bringing in people from other agencies.
we've always done that. Yes, at least the car show, that's the biggest one.
1.5.
We're not gonna get mutual aid on 4th of July. Everybody has 4th of July on the same day. The car show is the big one that we rely on mutual aid. Okay, communications. I have all kinds, and we gotta probably do this one in 10 minutes, because I got a few more items that we want to tackle hopefully quickly. I had from Scott here about social media, and our social media presence has really got to be one-sided, us pushing information. I'm really happy with, I'm just getting Josh up and running, and he did the he and his wife did the Imagine Fort Orchard stuff. They did our park survey last year. His skills in that realm are really good, and I'm really going to try to leverage that in our outreach processes. He's not quite as good as Ryan was in press releases, but that was Ryan's forte. But Ryan trained our staff up to a certain extent, and me too, and some of that.
So what media is he using?
We have Facebook.
Facebook. Okay.
We use Facebook.
The city's Facebook.
We have a Facebook page, and we have our website, and that's where we push our social media stuff. The police department, they're in the process of setting up a Twitter page. So once again, is pushing information, related to an accident, that kind of stuff. That's coming soon, and I just signed some approval papers for that for the police department to set that up sometime this week. We do have, and matter of fact, I looked at our utility statement today, and it had a message on it. I can't remember what it was. We have 2 lines of text at the bottom. I really look at it myself. Scott's brought forward that there are other opportunities out there to have more robust outreach. I personally throw that garbage away when other utility bills, but I don't know how effective we at times will pay extra to stuff the Chimes and Lights flyer in there. It's pretty expensive. I mean, it's pretty restricted with our utility, the service that we use. it's a single page, it's an envelope, and we're allowed 2 lines of text at the bottom of the utility page. Do you guys want us to put that out and look at different alternatives? Well, it's a staffing issue how big of a priority is that?
Let me make the pitch since I brought it up. So one of the things that I observed, and you guys already heard this, is that the big challenge is getting people to want to be involved. And so when I was talking with people, a lot of people weren't aware of the event center, but once you got engaged with the event center or the pathway, they wanted to know more. And so that was great. And so one of the things that I talked with people about is, well, we've talked about utility statements in the past. What if we were to try and message it something on the back of those envelopes? And I sent you guys all this, but a QR code.
We shouldn't
or-
have sent all those guys that.
Individually.
Individually. Maybe a website. And I talked to Olympic Presort, and they said, yeah, this is something we can do. We could do it by the thousands if that's what you want, and it could be customized. So if there's a park survey, you could catch that on the back of the envelope. I know that changes how we would operate. And when I get my utility statement, I just look at the amount to make sure it's nothing's.
You and me both.
And then I throw it
Everything else
away
goes
because I'm auto payment and all that. So I think there could be some value in doing this, and maybe it would be too difficult to customize messages, but we could at least have a statement like, go to www.portorchard for more information, and here's the QR code. So that was my pitch on that.
I mean, I think if there was the Facebook, Twitter platforms, the right platforms for pushing out information, right? This is where most people
And our
are. It's not the Kitsap Sun, it's not the Portage Independent. And so maybe if we had more messaging around letting people know that's where all the information is stored. So instead of, taking all of these little things and trying to promote this or this or this, just promote the fact that if you want to know anything about our city, subscribe. And this is where it always is, and it's up to date every day.
Just a second, Mark was at the chamber meeting yesterday, and it's not just us. The school district did a survey, and basically Matt Murphy was shaming everybody in the room because nobody responds to things. And well, where do we get? I said, I've got a fireworks survey. I've got this, and and what's the term for it on our Facebook?
We like, share.
You friend it or whatever.
Yeah,
share.
You like,
No, well,
share,
you gotta ask. It's gotta be in your
Timeline.
your contacts or whatever.
Friends list.
Yeah.
Friends list or
they
whatever.
call it.
You gotta subscribe. Thank you. That's the term I was looking for. You gotta,
Yeah, follow us, subscribe.
yeah, you gotta be a follower or subscriber. Nobody knew. I know, gosh, we've had Facebook for how long? Longer than I've been there.
Well, not everybody uses Facebook.
No.
Yeah, but we've got our
Yeah.
web page and, go ahead, Cindy first.
Okay, so a while ago, I remember Jerry coming to the meetings and saying, I have to get the sign out in front, right? And I have been watching, because I've been traveling across the country a lot, about these signs, and I was thinking about, the informational signs that we have for events, traffic kinds of situations, whatever.
Our code won't allow it. You'd have to change our code.
You're talking about digital sign?
I am talking about a digital sign.
Our
The
code
fire
won't allow it.
station has it.
Yeah, our code won't allow it now. Those are up, you guys banned those.
There's no way. How
No.
come the fire
Well, we
station can still
change the
have it?
resolution, though.
Because of grandfathered in?
They're correct. Those were built before, so, but if we get a reader board with flashing lights on it, then the car dealerships are gonna want it and everybody else is gonna want it.
But they do have it. They do have reader boards that change all the time. I mean,
Correct. They were grandfathered before.
okay,
you
well,
guys
they already
changed the
have
code.
them, so, we would just catch up to them. But I'm just saying,
I don't know. I see a URL when I'm driving and I forget. it.
not a URL, but you know what? So much information can be conveyed in a couple of lines. And we have how many thousands and thousands of people going through that if we had.
How safe is it if you're looking at that versus the
You're
pedestrian?
usually sitting
crosswalk?
here, you just got done saying that the cars go through at 5
That's
miles
true.
an hour and you'd be reading.
Touche.
Yeah, okay, so I actually think that something along those lines, a legal thing, I don't know what that would end up being, but we're missing an opportunity to connect with people all the time. And maybe we will have to change our sign code.
I think if anybody that wants to find something that's happening in the city, it's there, they can find it. They're choosing not to come find it.
It's on our webpage.
It's everywhere.
That is part of my impression.
It's like how much money and effort and time
If
do
you
you want to
really
spend
are-
debating this?
We've got
It's
2 more
already
minutes on this
there.
topic,
Staff
and
does
we
an
gotta
amazing job.
Yeah.
John,
I was just going to raise the point that it's an ongoing challenge from my perspective to try to figure out how to reach people. You know, it's no longer take out a display ad in the newspaper that doesn't work. My point, we're doing this as training. In fact, next week, we're going to be introducing to the public, we just established a blog in addition to our Twitter and our Facebook and part of the information is you got to keep it fresh. You got to keep it relevant. You need somebody that's going to do it. I had to hire, I got 1.5 people that one in particular I just hired, that's their job. Is you have to make sure that that information is fresh because if you try to communicate and people see that, oh, this is last month's stuff, they're not going to come back.
Right.
Well, consistency is the other.
Well,
other item in there.
consistency.
You gotta be
and, you know,
consistent
like I
with your
said,
message.
We are just rolling out our blog and thing. And all that's doing is another method to say, here's an issue. If you want a lot of detail, click on it and it'll take you to our webpage.
Yeah.
Or take you to somewhere where there's more detailed information. But
and I,
that's an ongoing effort.
And I just want to, Sean, I take your point, but when I mentioned the event center, people lit up that didn't know about that.
and I've got a 4x8
Yeah.
billboard going on the waterfront in the next 30 days, I hope, it's the poster board of the event center.
Yeah.
And I've got a survey that was launched today to ask, you know, community that spells unity on the front of the building is
Mhm.
so powerful. Event center on the other end is lame. I want the community to tell us, what should that message be? So, you know. So
And I would hope
I'm-
in all of your survey documents to say, by the way, if you want ongoing information, subscribe here.
That's actually a good point.
Scott's got a few more on here.
Well, I'll just, we talked about social media. You and I talked about how we're doing better with maybe time stamping for
And
people.
I've got that on the list too.
Okay.
I'll touch on that.
And
real
then the
quick.
mayor's blog.
Mayor's blog is a non-starter, and I will commit to, unless you guys want to hire a person, full-time
So-
public information person, and I don't think, we have bigger needs than that.
And maybe it's not really a blog, but it's a summary of issues that have been adopted or approved by the council. And it's the key issues that.
Not this mayor. I don't have time. I'm not a writer and I don't have time. I'm just being honest.
And I hear what you're saying. I think you put a lot of effort and you have good content with your newsletter. What I'm suggesting, and maybe Scott is that you just repurpose it to the different channels. Like you send out an email of what's in your newsletter. It's like, I know you think you send it because you're sending people a link to the PDF of your newsletter, but people aren't going to download or read it. Sometimes you have to give them little bites and say, there's more if you go here. I think it's just advertising what we're doing in different ways. Like, I think we could do more with email. We can get it more frequent.
I hear you on what I will commit to doing is because COVID is really, we haven't been together a lot here in City Hall and we're all busy. Is I used to do I tried to do a quarterly newsletter and I haven't done one in a year. And I will commit to getting us back on that. And
Well-
director's gonna kill me for it because I pick the topics, they have to write it. And then I put it in my words and then it's my newsletter, but you need to do it.
This idea was more about real-time messaging about why what we just adopted was important to you and
I simply don't have time, Scott.
Yeah.
It's just, unless
Well,
we're gonna
but on
hire a
that-
staff person to do it.
And I'm not siding with Rob on this, but that would be our messaging. We're the ones that passed it. It was important to us. He had nothing to do with it.
right. I was,
Maybe we should do it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That would be a message from the council.
Well, maybe we should have a council message.
Are you gonna do it?
Sure.
I'm not.
I'm not,
Nominate
no,
John.
I'm not.
Brandy's cringing over here. This is a public record.
Nightmare, exactly. No, I was just saying that we're the ones passing policy.
well, this was modeled after what Gig Harbor's last mayor was doing. The recent mayor scrubbed that activity, but
Yeah.
the prior mayor used to send out a little.
I'll be quick.
Mhm.
There was something that was brought up or mentioned the other day at a chamber meeting that made perfect sense. In today's world, there's multiple areas where you can get your information from, almost too many.
It's too many.
Back when we were all younger, that are sitting around this table, there was the newspaper, there was the radio and the television set. Now we've got so many different methods of receiving our information.
And most of them aren't true.
It's kind of watering it down significantly. But I think it's a group, as long as, and as the city, as long as we continue to try to improve on our communication out to our citizens, that's really all we can ask of the city as a staff, and all our citizens should be asking of us is the same thing. Just try to be as transparent as we can, get information out as we can, and let them know where it's at.
You know, I was being a little bit facetious a minute ago about putting it on your surveys, but the more I think about it.
That's a good
The
idea.
most important thing I think we could do is to tell people where to get the information. Not try to hand them the information, but tell them where they need to go or how to get the information. So,
Subscribe to Facebook or here's our website.
yeah,
Let's just
that's
keep
it.
beating those two
Everything we
drums.
do,
Just beat
we
those
should
two
be
drums.
I did it yesterday.
Back
I
and
those two
told
drums.
people where to get it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whenever I give a speech. And that's,
Because, you know, again, it's gotta be relevant, it's gotta be timely, it's gotta be without. We publish our agendas, maybe it's the day before the meeting, but we publish our
you know,
agendas.
we Friday
We,
before.
we
People
include
want to know
minutes
something.
of
Try
our
to say
previous
City of
meeting,
Porter
so the
Tribune.
information is
For the
readily
first thing that came
available.
up,
Direct
People
people
just
to
may
it.
not know
the
how
survey
to
about
get
our
it.
community center. It's all
So
here.
everything that we do is,
That's why I
that's
call
what we
it
need
bullshit.
to keep
People say you
promoting.
don't know what's going on.
Here's where you get the
It's all
information, go
there.
there, and you can get whatever.
First thing that came up.
Mayor, can I just, go ahead.
What-
I just want to
Okay,
see
you know.
if I caught any budget items so far, I haven't.
No.
heard anything budget related.
They didn't say that they wanted to hire a public information officer.
No.
No,
That's
No,
what I was trying to get, thank you.
yeah, I wasn't asking.
no.
Okay, Scott's last item, and it was the best idea he had, is time-stamped minutes. So our minutes, when we create them, Janine said she can add, it'll only take her about 15 minutes more when she does the minutes. And so she's creating the minutes from the video. And so she's gonna put the timestamp where, so if you're interested in that item that's in the middle of the agenda, you can fast forward through all of the stuff you didn't want to see, and because it's at 8 minutes and 27 seconds.
Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
There we go.
All right.
We're implementing, we already implemented that one. No, you didn't even put it on the list.
Sweet.
And that's because we have 300-page packages and
Yes.
3-hour meetings.
I
Yeah.
know it.
Yeah.
But
Good idea.
Mark gave me a similar list. Most of them weren't the good ideas, but I've got, because he's a rookie.
These are ready.
And we've got one of them
I thought I
on
was
here
done
later
with that.
in growth. Mark wanted to talk about growth. We'll get to that in a minute. And then the infamous, we lack transparency. That comes up every 2 years for 6 months. I think we're very transparent. But there's people that are critics that's just their buzzword that they like to use.
It's a popular buzzword.
It's a popular buzzword.
You know, I'm sorry, this is where you get the buzzword. Every time I ask the person about how they were transparent, there's
No
no
answer.
substance behind it.
Mhm.
And what we've all discussed today, leading that discussion, Mayor, has been keep pointing them in the right direction. I agree.
Seconded.
I mean, so Mark's other topic we'll get to here just a few minutes. So that's what I had for.
Was it a good one? Was it a-
Apparently not.
You
He's a
gave me
rookie
6
after all.
things and, yeah, whatever, Mark. No, some of it was incorporated.
Sounds like my wife. Yeah, whatever, Mark.
We're gonna talk about growth in a few minutes. Anything else for community? I just,
Where do we land on utility statements? And are we gonna try and do something in the statement itself, or,
we have no ability other than the 2 lines that are there,
and what do
Without
those 2 lines
one.
say now?
whatever you want them to say.
Well, they should at least reference our website.
Yes.
Okay,
Website and Facebook page.
there we go. So there's the
All of
policy
us at
directive.
these 2 places.
Yep.
Our utility statements will reference, you know what? I think they might.
All our news, all.
I
our
just looked at
all
it
the
this
time.
morning when I paid mine. I think it's got our website. If it doesn't already, we'll make that happen.
Well, let's make it specific. If you want additional information on what we're doing, go here.
Yes,
Yeah.
something that's got a.
It's more concise than that, but I think that's what it might be. I just paid mine this morning and I made a point because I knew, I never look at it.
Yeah, and Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook.
I think it's our Facebook
And
page and our
website.
website. I think that's right there. But we'll put that on there as a policy directive.
Yeah, make sure it's got it.
Today. Wait till the bill shows up, then I go on and say it.
I just want to add that I think we could make the website easier to navigate, but that's a discussion for another time, maybe.
We are, that website that we have, I think is really good and powerful for what it is. And when I first became mayor, we put $25,000 into the budget to rebuild a new webpage. Okay, and then we have the ongoing updates and all of that. This is I went to my first AWC conference that I went to, and one of the sessions that I went was a company pitching the website that we have. It is a national product that was, I think we were 12,000 citizens. It was a penny a citizen at the time. We pay $120 a year for that website. We spent $5,000 up front to implement it, and we pay $120 a year. And there's modest updates to it, but it is a canned municipal product, and we can't change it.
I think it's super easy to use. I mean, it's just, everything's right here. What's that?
Try searching for something. Search for TIP.
Yeah, the search engine isn't that strong.
The search engine, it's.
We're responsible for the content. So we're responsible for that. But the framework of the product, and Janine always looking for good photos. If you've got come across a special Port Orchard photo, I send a lot of them. A lot of them have lately been coming from our police department and the drone. They put the drone up and they get great pictures. And Ken Cambridge from Shires,
Yeah.
the sunset picture was his. So, all right, homeless discussion. Gosh, we talk about this every Tuesday. It's a problem. We're dealing with it firmer than other communities are, and definitely the county. We don't allow anybody, even John Clausen, to be in our parks after dark. And if somebody complains, then a police officer comes to talk to John and tells him to quit making so much noise in the park. So I'm comfortable with what we're doing. I love that we found Kitsap Homes of Compassion, and we're funding that agreement with them for the beds. And I want to follow up with Joel and see how he's coming along with that. And I want to see those dollars deployed and us providing treatment options and shelter to people that want help in our community. And it was my personal belief that if you don't want our help and you're going to commit crime in our community, I don't have a place for you in my heart. You need to commit that crime someplace else. And not in the city of Port Orchard. And I'm thankful COVID's getting behind us, and we're going to be able to arrest these people and put them in jail, and they'll stay in jail for committing crime. And this has gone on too long. And if anybody's got opinions that differ from that, I welcome them. But that's really we've got a navigator. We're out contacting people. We're offering services. And unfortunately, which is the next topic, our code enforcement person has really become the homeless encampment enforcement person. And
Before we move on to that though, just as a general observation and comment, the legislature just wrapped up their session here last night, or this morning, whatever. Yeah. There's something like $800 million in the state budget to deal with homeless. I'm assuming that some of that funding will be available to communities. And the only thing that I would point out, and I very much appreciate what you're saying, I'm in the same camp with you. We should be offering services, but if they don't want our services, then we need to focus our attention on those who need services or will take. My reference of the legislature was we just need to make sure that we're aware of what's available to our communities collectively. And maybe this is a more county-wide kind of discussion.
I agree.
That we should make sure that we're asking if it's available for funds to deal with some of these issues appropriately.
Yes, there were a number of resources put in place, and I don't know what all those entail. I know Paulsbo did their own 1/10 measure. We don't have a human services division. We talk about that.
I'm just suggesting if there's more opportunities to do more collectively, not necessarily just in Port Orchard. But if there's something just for Port don't know what that would be.
And the county just began collecting their tax. I'm looking forward to that opportunity to
Yeah.
be part of their process to make sure that the resources are also being spent in Port Orchard in a way that benefits our community. So there's more to work to be done on that. There's,
Well,
We-
there's a
we need more.
coordinated resource, so that was my only point. with
Yeah.
this stuff, is that there's a potential resource there that I want to make sure that we are
there's
exploring if it's available for us.
Yeah. and what that means. And
Yeah.
I think likely it's gonna be partnerships like Homes of Compassion,
Yeah.
where the pass through, because I don't have room for a human services division. And I think it'd be a waste of those resources for us to hire employees and prop up our own division when the county has a very robust one.
That's why I said it's maybe a larger discussion beyond Port, the city of Port Orchard. It's more a county-wide discussion, but I just want to make sure that we're not Port Orchard, but we collectively are looking at what opportunities might be available. And I agree with you. The folks that we've retained services, have them provide rooms for, I think it's a great way to deal with it. They're set up to deal with that more so than we are. If we can get more funding from the state to do more with it,
Yeah.
you know, that'd be great.
I'd like to do 2 or 3 more agreements like we did with Old Kitsap, because we've got more $1406. I just want to be prudent on how we deploy those. There's the former church up on DeKalb, and they're not far enough along, and I think they're gonna target teens at risk. And I would like an opportunity to work with them
That'd be great.
and help fund some of their operational costs, but they're, I think, 6 months or a year out before they're gonna be ready. And
Should work with.
excuse me.
So while he's coughing, one of the issues is getting housing for people and there's I don't know if it's under Homes of Compassion, but Joel was a part of it. The old elementary, school, I think it was an elementary school in Gorst is
Yep.
looking at converting over.
Yeah.
That's in the city of Bremerton, they're working.
County,
Is it county?
Yeah.
On that side of the road?
Mhm.
the Gorst is still county, it never was annexed.
Mhm.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's supposed to be, but anyway, so that's 60, I think 60 rooms they're looking at.
Okay.
So they're
Great.
looking at.
That's my point, is if we could help get state
Yeah.
money to help with that facility development, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I acknowledge there
More
needs to be more
resourceful
shelter
too, more
beds.
bang for your buck when you're dealing with the private communities than what it would cost us. to
Yeah.
do it. So
Yeah.
we just need to find more money to support more of them.
Especially with the cost of that building, because it's been gutted.
In particular with Veterans Park, what we're seeing with our navigator, most of the people want to live this way.
Yep.
And they don't want our help.
Yep.
And we've got to change that.
Mhm.
Did
How-
you say most people want to live?
They
Don't.
do not want our help and they want to live the way they're being allowed to live in the park.
Yep,
Most?
yes.
98% of them, it's a one-off when we offer services and they want
And
services.
it's nothing new. You talk to people I know people that do this for a living and for years they have said this, that they know it's a choice.
Okay.
Well, we've been hearing that from the folks that have gone in there and cleaned it up, that they've sent their people in and they meet with them weekly and some people have taken advantage of the services and others. I want to live in Port Orchard, I want to live with my kids, I want to, whatever the reason.
Well, I guess I know there's a lot like that, but that's in contrast to what I think Anton said, which was that when they surveyed, most would want to take advantage of the mileage shelter.
And I don't think we have enough.
I disagree with his comment.
Okay.
That is in contrast to what our navigator is telling us.
Okay, interesting.
So assuming that there were enough spaces for people, we seem to be thinking that we would send them there, but,
There are enough spaces for the people asking for our help.
okay, but I don't know that there really are enough spaces for everyone who needs a place. So my theoretical question when I put this on was just, where would council put a tent city? Or what location do you think would be appropriate to have a service for the homeless? For example, Mile Hill seems a good central location, but we've heard about a lot of pushback there. So, what are
like a
some locations?
Nicholsville?
Pardon?
Like a Nicholsville?
Yeah. What are locations that you would offer or think, by the industrial center, for example? It usually helps if they're on a transit line because not all of them have cars.
Right.
I don't have a location to offer.
So we
I
have
wouldn't
nothing to say.
want a Nicholsville.
I like
city
it. Let's
myself.
focus our energies on those that want our services and let's, you know what I mean? And let's really figure out how many that is, because I think that's a number that's actually manageable. And those that don't want the services and they're out there creating crime, to Mayor's point, I don't have a huge heart for that.
So,
Criminals are different than those that are homeless and need help.
so the solution for that is that we have to, it sounds like we would just put them in jail. We would just round them up.
If you're committing
If you're
crime,
committing crimes,
Or what if they're just trespassing on some hidden forested area that we're not aware that they're there until it becomes an issue?
trespassing is a crime.
What if we're not aware of it? Then it's not a crime.
Well, of
our
course.
code, we have
I'm not
a
aware
code
of
enforcement
someone
officer of
stole
one
it.
that deals
Watch
with
out.
complaints.
So is one person enough to?
That's the next
Which
topic.
is- Okay. Yeah. I don't think we're,
It
and
is
I
a-
don't have a solution, but I don't think we're quite addressing the whole realm of. the
Yeah,
issue.
throwing them in
come
jail
up
for
with.
trespassing is not the solution.
No.
No, I think the bigger issue is, you know, the addictions and then the behaviors, the trash and the feces and everything else that goes along with it and abusing each other.
I think that all that is part and parcel of living in the woods.
Yeah,
Living in the woods,
that's why I say,
Yeah.
thinking when you mentioned Nicholsville, being on transit line, I think is important. Having utility services, but you can't just put somebody in a tent.
Absolutely.
To use an outhouse.
Absolutely.
Especially, you know, I don't like the idea of just, okay, let's go build a slum fill or stuff in there, we don't have to see them. Think about it. I think the approach that we're taking with this agency of homes and allocating 1 or 2 bedrooms in a home really makes sense, because you're not.
3 or 4.
putting them in service.
To live in a tent in our climate is not acceptable.
I don't like living
We
in
need
a
to
tent
find-
when my kids want to go camping.
Right.
That's
Much less
what-
When it's 20 degrees and raining, and so we need to find
Yeah, I
a
delivered-
true shelter. Tent
Yeah.
city to me is not a shelter.
It's amazing. I delivered bags of food to people that somehow they look clean and dry in a tent. And I thought it's raining and it's freezing and I don't know how they do it.
Tarps,
I just
they
don't.
become tarp masters.
So,
We ready to move on to,
Yeah.
so,
Mhm.
you
Can
know,
I just, sorry, is there a discrete policy or budget recommendation here?
it's coming.
Oh, for the homeless, okay, thank you.
So, I direct, you guys have authorized $100,000 and what's what we currently have in our, remaining on our budget for abatements. There's not enough bandwidth to do that. So the RV that we dealt with over on Salmonberry, they said, well, how are we gonna, I demanded that we deal with it. We dealt with it. And then, of course, finance says, why are we paying for it? Well, I think that was an abatement effort. So I'm getting in the, until there's a better solution, I'm gonna tap those dollars to clean up, messes on city property or city right of way. I think it's a form of abatement. And if we run out of money and we find time to do the Crawford abatements, I might be asking you for additional dollars to fund abatements, but I think we have to do ourselves what we're asking Kitsap County to do in Veterans Park.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm just communicating that to you as I've told staff, we're going to do this. When we see RVs parked where they shouldn't be, we're gonna talk to people. If we have to write tickets and if we have to impound them, we will. And then, when we come across encampments that have been abandoned and they're on our property, if they're not on our property, then it's code enforcement action and we're helping, we're informing that property owner to deal with it, that sometimes they're in right of way and they're on public property and we have to deal with it. And I'm directing staff we've got a company now that we've identified that will do this for us. There's storage requirements at times because these are somebody's belongings, that we have to store them, they'll do that. And it's not cheap, but it's what I believe we have to do.
But where are they based out of?
King County.
They're
And
not-
there's a company, the towing company is actually that tow yard that's out towards Shelton, you pass it. Between Allen and Shelton.
Oh, yeah.
They were the company that impounded the RV for us, and they disposed of it, they dealt with the hazardous waste. They do it all the things our union folks don't want to do. And aren't trained or equipped to do. So it's the absolute best way to deal with it. We pick up I told Katie, you just pick up the phone and deal with it. And as you identify those things, and where appropriate, we are, it's an abatement process. We're gonna send a bill to the property owner and probably put a lien on their property. If they don't clean it up, and we have to step in and do it. So I see it as a form of abatement. Yes, sir.
Just out of curiosity, how much communication do we get from property owners who have homeless folks on their property asking for our help to get them off their property?
The message is, it's usually the other way around. They aren't aware that somebody's on their property. It's a raw piece of land or something, and the neighbor complains, and we inform them. And that was the situation at Tractor Supply. The people that own that don't live here, and their tenants weren't telling them that the problem was, and all of a sudden and they're like, what's going on? And so that's usually the scenario. And then we inform them, it's your property, you need to deal with it. You need to trespass these individuals. If they don't leave, then we have a rule from our police department because it's criminal trespass. Okay? Then they're responsible for cleaning it up. If they don't clean it up, then that's where it's a code enforcement and abatement action. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I don't see this going away anytime soon. And I think in the next budget, you're gonna see a request that we add another code enforcement officer. And this person, Katie, doesn't want to do this. She's doing it and she's doing spectacular work. But I think we need to hire someone with that skill set. And that's what primarily they're gonna do, is deal with these abatement efforts that are related to homeless encampments. So.
They can work on signs.
This may be too leading a question right now.
Mhm.
You see that as code enforcement, or you see that as another navigator? The reason I asked that question.
It's code enforcement. Our navigator, I kind of had to get snarky when it came to, Katie wasn't getting, in my opinion, the support she deserved from, she works in DCD, and but she needed the help of the police department in some instances and public works in other instances. And she was getting pushback. And I talked to folks and said, in some cities, code enforcement is part of public works. In some cities, it's part of the police department. And Katie gets and I let Katie know that. If you don't get the assistance you need, then I'm going to talk to the director in that department. And if it continues to be a problem, then code enforcement, it could be your operation.
The reason I asked that question was because that she's a very compassionate person,
Yep,
and she has gone out of her way
She does.
to help.
and we've had to talk, she uses her own personal resources
I know.
at times, but yes, it's code enforcement, OJ.
Yeah, what I'm just saying is that person needs a unique set of skills. That's all.
Yeah, you're right. It's about hiring the right person, but I think we might need 2 code enforcement people anyway.
Right.
And I believe that's time to talk about that, and if we can afford to, and then that's budget to add a second code enforcement person.
I have a quick question based on what Mark was bringing up. When I was involved with the point in time count, we went to look for people. So we went onto private property.
Mhm.
So we were probably trespassing, and I realized that after the fact. But if we saw trash, are we obligated to report that to be remediated? It's a fenced off area. We're looking for where people were sleeping. That was our goals. And then later someone said, oh, you should be reporting it to code enforcement. I was thinking, no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to.
If there's egregious, possibly my box too.
Okay.
But yeah,
The two budget items, one would be a new code enforcement officer, and then it seems like abatement funds for this current budget. Is that?
I don't think you need to put that on there because I'm gonna come back. We have plenty of money, in my opinion, right now.
Okay,
There's $100,000 in that bucket. And if it gets slow, I'll come talk to you guys again.
but it's not something that you all need to prioritize.
I don't think so. We'll find those dollars or we'll stop doing it because we don't have any money left. One of the two. And I hope we're not gonna stop doing it.
So we haven't run through the 100,000 yet.
No, because that was for dangerous building abatement and she hasn't been able to do any of that because all she's dealing with is homelessness. There's buildings out there to abate. It's just a process and getting to court and doing all of that and the documentation. And Veterans Park primarily has been consuming her. She's out there 3 days a week. All right, this is Mark Generi's item. Growth. And how much growth is too much growth? You know, and Mark's new and I talked about this a little bit at the Chamber of Commerce meeting, you know, yesterday when somebody asked that question. I think we're all aware that there's the Growth Management Act and we're required to take certain population allocations so that in cities, so that we can preserve rural lands and prevent urban sprawl. And that's my elevator speech about GMA.
Well, and I think also part of the justification for growth management was to give us an opportunity to plan appropriately for growth,
Absolutely.
so that we could be ahead of it, not behind it. To me, the triggers that we have to be aware of is what are our capacity limits currently, and at what point do we need to make changes? I.e., how many homes can we connect to our existing sewer plant before we have to expand it? How many homes can we connect to our water system before we need to add more wells? You know, those are the kinds of issues. I don't think we have the ability to just flip the switch and say, okay, we're done, we're not gonna grow anymore. But it's our job to make sure that we are planning appropriately for it, so that it doesn't get out of hand and get away from us.
And
And the comp-
impose moratoriums. I mean, that's the tool we have to use when we run out of connections. And matter of fact, we
Which have
have,
a
we
shelf
live
life.
it. Yeah.
But there are things that we don't normally put moratoriums. Our road systems, we're doing impact fees and hopefully we're gonna be able to couple it with that, but the fact is, we've got a vessel having a problem right now that is partially driven by growth, that we haven't been able to put impact fees on it, so that's where we need to be ahead of the curve. And it's coming, let's plan for it, make sure that we're ready for it.
And the comp plan is supposed to tie all that together
Yeah.
and make it
Yeah.
completely defensible and unappealable.
My concern over that, and the reason for bringing this up in the first place was, we are growing at a tremendous rate. And from an outsider's position, we haven't done a tremendously good job in being prepared for this growth that we're in now. Over the years, things have been, the appearances, things have been kicked down the curb. And now we're in a point where, it seems like we're in a point where, okay, now we got to stop this curb kicking and get this stuff brought up to speed, but we're growing at such a fast rate, we can't keep up. And
That's
that's,
Well, and
that's
I would
the
say
concern.
that, I think we're doing a really good job of having development pay for new development.
Yes.
All that new
Agreed.
stuff's getting done, you know, new water systems, new lift stations, new. But I think the one thing that we haven't been able to do is really put together a concrete funding plan to repair things. we already have.
For
The main-
Existing
the ongoing
core
maintenance
traffic.
tends to
Right.
be- Right.
And I think
The
you're.
planning part's good, we're just not keeping up with
And-
just for.
Your
and I'll say
analogy,
from-
I think, is a good one. And it's, for years, you know, we've been, well, growth has been occurring at this rate that we can kind of keep ahead of it, and all of a sudden it started to accelerate. It's like, oh my gosh, you can't necessarily go put in, well, let's go put in an extra million-gallon reservoir system just in case somebody shows up. I mean,
Right. Never want to do that.
no, you don't. So you, to some extent, we're playing catch up, but hopefully we're doing much better now in planning ahead.
Market
development,
factors,
pay for development.
market factors.
Yeah,
And I'll
It'll slow
relate
down.
from when I was door knocking that most people wouldn't care about the growth at all if it weren't for the traffic.
yeah.
Mhm.
And we're always playing catch up with traffic. Maybe it was a little bit 10 years ago, it's a lot now.
Yeah.
Well, it's gonna be
We're always
traffic.
behind that curve.
It's a major investment to make those big traffic improvements.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Tremont or Bethel.
Well, it's currently traffic, but it'll be road repair and improvements
Yeah, yeah.
down the road
Yeah.
because roads wear out
Yeah.
quicker, the more traffic you have.
I think it's a valid concern, and I think we're all a bit uncomfortable with, our catching up on our infrastructure, and we're gonna pay for it, but when I go to mayor's exchanges, I really feel good about what we have going on here in this relationship in this room, and how we're doing things and how we're planning and we're working together, because it doesn't exist in a lot of other places.
I agree.
And, Sophie comments to me every time we get together, what a great group this is, and.
Well, I always, in my history here, I've always looked at the function of the city as a three-legged stool. It takes the council, the mayor, and the staff. And if all three of us aren't playing together, it really, trust me, I did hear, but it's not played together. It's horrible. Yeah, once.
Did you get in a fight in a
Just one
restaurant?
It was terrible.
Well, then they kicked me out of the park.
Well, and that's something to be considering as we consider annexation, because we annexed some of these huge headaches, okay? Bethel, Porter, the county was not on top of its game,
Yeah.
and we
And never,
inherited.
and never was going to. and that's why
Right.
we
It was
did it.
And we
26
inherited that
million
huge
at that
big
time.
mess, okay, and now as we're looking at these new annexations, that's gonna be taking on quite a bit more, because I know some of those areas, streets are in terrible condition, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're handling growth and you're getting it in chunks like that, that's.
I just have a question for Mark. What do you think is the most egregious example of growth gone amok? Would you say it's Bethel or Sedgwick, or do you have a concrete example?
Well, I think Bethel and Sedgwick are both, and Tremont are prime examples, but primarily Bethel
Unfortunately, it's state highway.
between
Yeah.
Sedgwick and
One Tremont.
Lund area, yeah, we see that. The traffic is just phenomenally bad. What we've done at Tremont with the roundabouts is a tremendous asset to the city. But really, all we've done is moved that plug farther into Bethel now.
More efficiently.
Much more efficiently.
And stoplight quicker.
Exactly.
Hurry up and stop.
And we're still plugged.
There's a difference between Bethel, north of Tremont, where you have the 3 lanes, the middle lane for turning.
Mhm.
And then you get south of it and it jams everything up because of Salmonberry, Berry, or any of the other berries there. And that's the whole thing. And, it's.
The information we get from our traffic consultant, we all have opinions, but be able to make data-driven decisions is gonna be very, because, if we aren't able to pass a 1/10 measure, we won't see Bethel fixed in our lifetime. We will be doing, we're lucky to get one of these $4 or $5 million grants every 2 or 3 years. I'm just gonna be honest. And we're gonna have to do this an intersection at a time, every 2 or 3 years. It's not, it'll be a long time before this is fixed. And that's why we owe it to our citizens to talk about this. And if they tell us, I don't want to tax myself to fix this problem, then that's okay, but we're gonna have to deal with the traffic that exists there. Because otherwise, we're just fixing an intersection at a time.
Bit of a history lesson, and I'm trying to refrain from that, but just to give you an example of Chicken NDA, when the city built the bridge across Blackjack up the trail, that was originally designed to be a 2-lane bridge. And the contractor came to us and said, look, for, I don't remember the number, for just a little bit more, we could make that bridge a 4-lane. And thank God the council at the time decided Well, that's a wise investment. Now, the traffic report suggested you don't need 4 lanes. That's a waste of money. We went ahead and put in the 4-lane bridge, which brought 4 lanes from the boulevard to Bethel. Now, looking back in hindsight, God, I'm glad we did that.
Yeah.
Because
That's an
that was
expensive
3
bridge.
months.
What would it cost you to build a 4-lane bridge today?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Especially across there.
So it's a chicken and the egg thing. Sometimes you just have to.
You remember the whole bridge.
Okay. We got a couple more, one more thing to tackle here. We're not gonna get to our prioritization exercise. So Sophie and I are gonna work on something I'm gonna email to you guys. And I don't think the list is too long, and I just like you, whatever, if it's 1 to 6 or 1 to 10. You guys to email it back to me, give me a prioritization. And I'll try, I'm leaving town in the morning.
I mean, I'd be happy to compile
Yeah,
and tabulate everything if you want to send it to me instead.
Are you
Certainly.
ready for responses tonight?
no,
Okay.
we're working towards the next budget process. So we got some time. The goal was to do this as an exercise today. I think the conversation and the dialogue is more important than the ranking exercise. So I got one more, and I got bad news. I saved it for the end of the day. We're not gonna get our equipment. Well, the new delivery date is in the end of April
Which
This
equipment?
for this one. And that's why I would love for that display to be on all 3 screens. It's the audio piece that's missing too, the Zoom to this dais. So we need to talk about when we want to come back here. And second to that is, I really like our committee meetings on Zoom. And I think we don't take testimony at a work study. If we could, even if when we're coming back here, it's your guys' meeting, we'll do it any way you guys want, but I think staff and I would really appreciate the work study and the committees to stay, on the digital platform. And then we offer that hybrid meeting for our business meetings. And I want to hear from you. And are you comfortable waiting till, let's see, May? It'd be May, I hope in May, to have an in-person meeting. So Jay raised his hand first. Then
I would love to wait till June. We're reaching more people with the webinars on it. It gives people a chance to easily come back in if they want to have comments. I would strongly support waiting till June to come back in when we have it.
I hope it's not June, I hope it's May.
Yeah, well, might have it be July then, if you're gonna do all that.
What do you mean by hybrid? Who is showing up and who isn't?
Okay, so a hybrid meeting, I can't have us up here. And that device, if his citizens testifying there, they can't hear, that microphone is that. And remember, we tried that one hybrid meeting?
Yeah.
And those that were on the TV, you couldn't hear anything going on in this room. Okay, so it doesn't work. The Zoom platform doesn't work for an in-person meeting here until we have this equipment that will integrate our 3 eras of technology into one platform. Okay, that's the rub. And then we have a microphone that's going to come down from the ceiling, and then we're isolating our speaker systems as part of this too. So in this format, if we were doing this, we'll have a microphone here that captures this room really well as part of those improvements. And so I've been told another 30 days until we get that equipment, and I hope that's accurate. And then Sean was next, and then John.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even with the Zoom format, and it is way more convenient for people to join a meeting from the comfort of their home. There's no question about it. We get very, very little comments in Zoom, very little. It's not really any different than when we were live. We'd have 2 or 3 people that actually stood up to talk. I, for one, I like the idea of getting back together. I just think I'm being a person, I miss it. I would do it April 1st would be my recommendation. And when we get the hybrid stuff, we'll launch it. I'd rather see us get together and have people start to come back together again. That's just one opinion.
Jay's
But-
saying status quo, Sean's saying whether we got the equipment or not, first meeting in April, we're up at the
So-
dais.
Can I just ask for, clarity? So no hybrid if that's what? if
Well,
that's
we don't
what-
have the technology. Once we do, then we'll implement the
Yeah.
hybrid instead of wait, you know what I'm saying? It's just different.
So Sean, to your point, are you meaning just the council meetings or all of our meetings?
I
committee
would take
meetings
his
as well?
recommendation that the 2 business meetings are done in person, everything else is Zoom.
And everyone's.
Where the
present.
public can come and engage with us, we're live in person.
Okay. John, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I guess I've got Jay's camp only from the standpoint that we have been reaching a lot more people, I think, via the virtual format than in person. And I think that's important, and I also think it's important that we maintain that connection, if you will, to the community. But we would have to make sure that that community gets an opportunity to talk to us, so that, with that in mind, I'm for staying virtual until we have the technology that can allow that and then come back together. My second and my original point was in reference to what you had said about you really like your committees virtual, and I'm fine with that. Other than we need to recognize that the spacing between the committee meeting and the start may only give us enough time to hang up on our virtual meeting at home and get in the car and rush down here so that we can be present for the.
I would say our 5 o'clock committee meetings
Probably be here.
have to end at 6.
Yeah.
And
Well, even
Yeah,
at
but that's-
6, you
So,
know,
I
I
think
come home from
starting-
work.
we're
and
starting
sit
ours
down
at
in front of the
4:30.
computer
yeah,
To do a committee meeting, and
you
then I
will-
usually take advantage of that 30 minutes after a committee meeting to grab a sandwich
Yeah.
before the council.
I think you leave it up to the committees. If some committees want to meet in person and some don't, it's whatever.
I'll share a secret with you. The sooner you start those committee meetings in the day, staff quits working at 4:30. They're hanging around waiting for your committee
Yeah.
to start. If you want to start at 4 or 4:30 on Zoom, we're there for you. That's not a problem.
Well, unfortunately, there's some of us that work for a living
Right.
that I have to.
So it's up to your guys' committee. You tell us what you want.
Yeah.
I recognize
The
that
other
we need,
option I could have is I could just stay in my office and do my committee meetings and virtual meetings from my office and
Well, that's what I do.
eat out of my brown bag that I don't normally bring for dinner.
Anthony's is downstairs. I don't.
Well, I know, that's what I do.
I don't have Anthony's
So
in my
I think
place.
I agree with Jay and John so far. I feel like people have come to rely on Zoom meetings to a degree, and I don't want to break that connection. So I'll come back when we've got it all figured out, and I agree with, for those that want to, let's Zoom for committee meetings and certainly work study.
I mean, if your committee as a group wants to meet in person, great. So many times though, on those, the work studies, not so many times, sometimes we have consultants that are expensive. And for them to not, we pay for their travel time to and from, and for them to just
Yeah.
sign on to Zoom
Yeah.
saves us money.
Well, I was going to add that I think maybe we need, I don't know, it's been a while since I looked at it. Make sure that we provide an opportunity ongoing for virtual attendance, if you will.
Mhm.
I remember just in this past year where Beck, Leavenworth,
Right.
was able to log on and
Yeah.
participate in the meeting.
Absolutely.
And Cindy, I know you've been back in Wisconsin, but she's
Absolutely.
been able to log on and participate, and I think having that
Yeah.
continued ability is really going to be important.
Yeah, and those are gonna be your guys' rules, and I think we're gonna need to create some policies. So that's probably a policy, creating policy about virtual meeting attendance and virtual meetings. So when we're, I don't think it's fair for, and it wouldn't probably be legal for Cindy to move to Wisconsin
Yeah.
and not tell anybody, and she never comes to a council meeting again, and she's just,
I think the city of Burlington has dealt with.
yeah, they did,
it.
and so we're gonna, you probably can't, it's it's gonna be your guys' rules, and you need to talk about this when we'll make it a work study
Yeah.
item, but how often is appropriate
Yeah,
for
exactly.
virtual meetings
Maybe get
versus?
3 a year or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
whatever.
let's,
Start
we'll
there.
have
Let's-
a work
Good,
study.
I like the idea.
Yeah.
Someone's able to
Where are
log
we
in.
on this?
Well, I've heard one for get back in this room and three say, like, if a fourth person says they want to stay on Zoom for these, I
I'll
think
be the fourth.
John shares Fred. Fred's got a shorter commute than I do, so. So Fred doesn't want to walk here. I don't know why anybody else would want it. All right, we're at our stop time. Good of the order here.
Well, just that I had, maybe some of you had outreach from a gentleman who wanted to talk about a dog breed ban because of his walks in some neighborhoods and where he's been rushed by a pit bull and another German. I don't know if anybody else got that. Okay.
There's a couple of aggressive dogs around and,
And he would call animal control, but you gotta go through 911 and they're just not responsive. And he literally, and I believe the guy, he's feared for his life a couple times.
But he wants us to.
He's got examples he wants to share with other jurisdictions that have bans.
as a dog owner,
He is,
I don't think
Cindy,
that
he's
there's
I don't
challenged.
think that you take one aggressive dog and ban an entire breed of dogs.
Does
He
he have a
attracts
dog?
dogs.
Does he have a dog?
No, he's not walking around.
I'd maybe recommend you walk his dog a different route.
He doesn't want.
Did a different route and he got charged by a German Shepherd. And so
I know which German Shepherd it is.
you've talked to him?
No, I don't, but I know which German Shepherd it
In our
is.
neighborhood?
Yeah, I avoid it.
I would suggest that maybe mayor, you contact officially the city to the animal control and the two contracts with those people to do that for us. And if they're not
He's supposed to
responsive.
reach out to me. When he has it, but when he does, I'll let you know.
I'll reach out. to
Mayor,
him. Regarding responsiveness.
What walk should I go?
Mayor.
Right, I typically run into him on Kitsap Street.
Mayor.
He said this was a lady and he was.
And
at a park.
Lorraine actually has a dog that Lorraine
Well, then
had. a
are
problem
are
with.
we adjourned?
Rob,
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you for
All right,
stopping.
thank you.
Thank you.